Hi everyone, my name is Akayla. Welcome to my channel. I realized that I did not get a chance to introduce myself to you guys. So I thought I'd go ahead and tell you guys some things about myself when I was born to now. It's probably going to be in a couple videos, a couple parts. This video in particular is going to be just about me being born, growing up. Found like a certain turning point in my life just to see how long this video is going to be in itself. So yeah, let's get started. My name is Akayla. I already said that. I was born October of 1995. I'm a Libra. I was born in the sunny state of California, Martinez to be exact, during the early ages of my life. So between the ages of basically my birth to about 3 years old, this is according to my mother, we lived in a little town called Bay Point. If you know anything about Bay Point, shout out to Bay Point. We love it over there. Between, I guess, my mother and my father, my dad is a year or so younger than my mom. They were very young when they had me. When I look back at my life, between the earliest of my memories that I can remember, I remember a lot of moving around. I think I remember a church that my mother used to take me to. I remember a house that's like a family house that we have that's in Bay Point. Yeah, I think that's about it for my earliest of memories of like between the ages of like birth and like a couple years old. When I was about 3 years old, my mother decided to reunite with my father. His plans were to move to Ohio for some reason. Not really sure where his head was. Not really sure 100% what to think about this place, but it's definitely an interesting place to live. My mother going to college for nursing. I do remember taking me to a lot of her classes, a lot of her college classes when I was very young. Assuming because they didn't have a babysitter, didn't trust a babysitter. Not sure what my dad was doing at that time, but I know for a fact because I was there, because my mother took me to these places. My mother took me pretty much everywhere, and majority of the time. And I remember going to her college. I remember her taking me down this really dark room that had crystals along the walls. I think I'm not sure what the correct term is it geology, one of those things, the study of crystals, where I guess one of her classmates was studying crystals and stuff like that. That is a very strong memory in my mind. I also remember using the college computers to play Disney online games and Barbie games, My Scene games. I remember having my first chai tea. Mom took me to get my first chai tea. It was an experience. Never forgot that. Lots of core memories between me and my mom, from my mom. I remember my mom taking me on little walks to go get, I guess back then what was called penny candy. It's those fruities. This lady had this little shack or whatever in town. We lived in Youngstown, by the way. Shout out to Youngstown. And we would go there and get like 100 pieces of tiny little candies for like $1 because it was penny candy. I have lots of traumatic memories from my childhood that I do not want to speak about at this point. I'm gonna keep that between like me and a therapist to keep from like re-experiencing unnecessary energetic like relapses. My dad's mom, my Nana, had this family house that she had bought for us. That's the house that I remember growing up in the most, between like first grade all the way up to like fourth grade, I would say. 35 Hilton, this is what it looks like now. It looks absolutely trash because my grandmother still owns it. I don't know what her plans are for it, and we don't talk, so it's just kind of sitting there collecting dust, not being used, just like, and that was the house that I grew up in. Lots of core memories there. I remember running up and down the street as a kid with my friends, playing tag and hide and seek and exploring the neighborhood. I grew up in a generation where you got to be home before the street lights come on. I remember having mainly cats as like the family pet. Unfortunately, my parents argued a lot. Mainly what I remember experiencing as a child is a lot of like negative energy from my parents, a lot of backlash because they consistently clashed heads, didn't see eye to eye, wasn't getting along, you know, for whatever their reasons were. I try to stay out of their business as much as possible, especially at this point in my life. I'm currently reaching the end of my 20s, about to hit my 30s, and I no longer wish to allow the negative aspects of my past to continue to affect how I make decisions now and going forward. That is like one of my main goals. That's really important for me. Yeah, remember growing up in this house a lot of core memories. It got to a point to where I guess something happened and my parents could no longer live in that home anymore. I remember moving to a different house across town for a little bit. And then I remember moving into a townhouse for a little bit. Now the townhouse was an experience because at that point my parents had roommates. I remember this, and this is early me, young me. I think I was no older than like 8 or 9 years old. I don't know. I can't remember the exact age I was, but it was between second, third, fourth grade where me and my parents were living in this townhouse, and they had these people who were their roommates to help them, I guess, pay for rent. I remember it was this young white couple, and they tried to make it work out, but I guess some things were happening, and we stopped living in that townhouse. And eventually, now this I do remember around the time frame. So like around the 5th grade, that was when we transitioned from living in Youngstown, Ohio to Columbus, Ohio. I remember that very well because I remember a 5th grade transition. I went to this school. I was the new kid and trying to adjust to living in a different place, going from old school to new school. After we moved to Columbus, we moved in with this lady. I'm not sure which one of my parents knew this lady. Unfortunately, had roaches infested throughout her apartment. I remember that. My mom was trying to clean up the space to make it less infested. Things just weren't working. Eventually, my parents got their finances together enough to where we moved from Columbus to Hilliard, Ohio. Now, Hilliard was where, that was like my 3rd school that I had attended during my 5th grade year. There was a lot going on. I was a child at that point. Let's keep that in mind. The last school that I went to where we kind of like stayed for a longer period of time and we stopped moving as much, and I attended J.W. Reason. I currently live here in Ohio now. Ended up back here probably because I need to heal some stuff within myself, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, all that. I'm ready for the healing. Absolutely. We ended up in these cute little apartments that my parents worked on maintaining and affording, along with their, I'm gonna speak frankly, their unfortunate habits. Both my parents were smokers. I know for a fact that it was my dad that was the main smoker and not my mom. My mom is more of a cigarette smoker for some odd reason. Not sure why. I think she probably gets it from her father based off of like the family history that I know so far. But I know for a fact that my dad was the main like consumer. My mom was just kind of there along for the ride, trying to take care of me and do her best as a mom, which I understand now. Very difficult when you're dealing with certain men in your life. I understand now as an adult and as a mother myself that it is very difficult to co-parent, especially in the same household, with someone who you clash with consistently, where you guys don't see eye to eye, you guys don't agree on things. That is very difficult to do. Beyond that, stayed in Hilliard for a very long time. I would say after JW, it was Memorial Heritage for middle schools. And somewhere between like Memorial and Heritage, we moved to Lincoln Village for like a little bit, But then that immediately didn't work out. My mom was like, no, I don't like it over here. We're not staying over here. Back to Hilliard in different apartments so that way I could finish out my schooling. I have a sister. I have a younger sister. She was born when I was 12 years old. There were some things that happened. I want to say when we moved to Hilliard the first time, for some reason my mom felt like she needed to go to California to have my sister. Not sure why that was. She had my sister. We came back here to Ohio. My mom at some point finished her nursing school, became a nurse for elderly people. I think it's called assisted living. So that way she could be a better mom. I'm not sure what my dad was doing career-wise. My dad had lots of different jobs. He worked for a place called Teleperformance. He worked at a straw company where he had an accident, unfortunately. His finger got caught in machines and his thumb got really jacked up. Other than that, my dad was not very consistent about where he was going career-wise or job-wise. He just had a job for a certain period of time. Those are my parents when it comes to the careers. Like, growing up, I was wishing, begging I had siblings. But when I eventually got a sibling, I didn't like it as much as I thought I was going to. Going from an only child to being an older sister was a transition because it was not what I thought it was. And also, I felt like if we were born closer in age, we probably would have fought more. So I've heard from actual siblings who are closer in age versus me and my sister who were over a decade apart. Teenage self, preteen self, I was not feeling it. I was not vibing being an older sister. I was just like, what is this baby? All these diapers, all these things. Like, oh my God, like, the attention's no longer just on me. It's now on this baby, this child. But I eventually came to this lovingly older sister, protective vibe. And it was unfortunate because I had just started getting good at being an older sister. That was when I began going to high school. I had my first paper money paying job through a neighbor who had lived across the street from us at that time. My dad, being who he was, he had brought in me across the street so that he could have a smoke sesh with the neighbor guy. And because my dad would bring me there so often while my mom was out working, the wife of the guy that my dad was smoking with, she was like, would you like to work for me? Because she had her own cleaning business. So she taught me how to clean people's houses, like good. Like, I had learned a really serious lesson by accidentally using the wrong cleaner on someone's really nice wooden table. And thank God for this lady, because I could have messed up a really good antique table at freaking 13, 14 years old, having my first job. Trying to be impressive, you know, I know how to clean stuff. I don't need any direction. I know what all teenager. Thank God she knew what she was doing. She's been cleaning houses for supposedly a really long time. And she was able to fix the table that I almost messed up. I'm really thankful for that, as I absolutely used her on my resume for my very first job that I got years later. Going into high school was, being how do I put this in a nice way towards myself? Being a black girl in the suburbs. I grew up here in Hilliard, Ohio between like the 2007, about 2012. Those are some interesting times to be living in certain areas in life, because you're still dealing with covert racism and two-faced racism. You're still dealing with things that people they want to say they psychologically don't understand, but they very much understood. But me, as a black kid, I didn't understand it until I'm well out of high school and looking back on like, wow, man, people were treating me a certain way because African American. Wow, that's crazy. You were African American, your parents had to have money in order for you to be with the popular kids, and your parents like had to be known with the other parents, you know, the white parents in the neighborhood. And if your parents didn't know the other parents and you weren't rich and you didn't have money, then you weren't considered a cool African American. They will treat you like you're fucking trash, like you pretty much don't exist. They'll be like, they're not kind, but they're nice. You know, I've got a book on it that I've read recently that helped me understand exactly what was going on. That they were being nice because that's just what they were taught to do, and not because they actually mean it. But it's one of those situations, like, just like, don't openly bully somebody, you know, obviously, but like, just be nice. You don't have to be friends with them, but you have to be nice to this person type of energy. And that's just really messed up to think about. And when you look back at growing up in predominantly white spaces as one of the people of color that grew up in those spaces, and you realize that it affects a lot of things when you grow up and then leading into adulthood, especially if you don't conscientiously address it and work through it as an adult. In middle school, someone had told me to go back to Africa, which was really messed up. We ended up in the principal's office. Nothing too crazy got to happen to that kid because, again, being an adult looking back at it, they would never say anything. They're not going to punish their own kids for being exactly what they taught them to be, which is messed up and very uncool, but that's just how it was. Because honestly, why would that kid even think to say that if they didn't hear it from their parents? I'm a parent. When you become a parent, you understand that children just repeat things that adults say. They repeat behaviors, repeat mannerisms, repeat the things that they hear from adults. And you heard it from one of your family members, if not someone very, very close to you, if you're going to sit up there and repeat it in middle school. Someone absolutely called me the N-word driving past me in their car when I was in high school. Also, with the struggles of my parents not being rich and well-known in the community, I wasn't a part of any solid, like, friend group. I tried to do sports, didn't pan out, because, again, the money thing, and he didn't have cool clothes. I guess I was like a floater. People like to call people like me who kind of like just stick to the sidelines and observe everything wallflower type of energy. I mean, I had friends in high school, but I had like one or two or three friends, and we were, I guess, the awkward kids, or the different kids, or the kids that didn't really fit anywhere. It was me, this one other girl, white girl, but I guess it's one of those like, you're cool but not cool enough kids. There was a white guy that we hung out with. They were all on the same vibe. They all lived in a house. I don't know, I guess our differentness in personalities is what brought us together. With time and adulthood, we all stopped being friends. I was the first one to go. Junior year of high school, I had moved from here in Ohio to California. My sophomore year of high school, my dad and mom officially broken up with each other. My father had moved to California, live with his father, and start a new life. My mom decided to stay in Ohio to continue her nursing and working where she worked because she had a really nice job. Literally was our apartment, less than a 5-minute drive to my mom's job. Right next to my mom's job was my sister's daycare, and then literally a minute down the road was my high school and also the middle school that I had went to. So when it comes to like me, my mom, and my sister, we had it. We were right there, and I didn't realize how good that I had it with my mom. It was just, I guess, a struggle because my dad had left, and I, at that point in my life, thought my dad was the cooler parent. For some odd reason, I would feel like it's a lot of like conditioned people-pleasing energy that I had growing up, because my dad, like, on a very certain like awareness level, I did not like my father. I also liked my father. I had very complicated feelings towards my father growing up, especially when I was in high school. My father disciplined me physically a lot. I'm talking leather belt discipline. At some point, he got to the point to where he just got, I guess, so angry and so just displeased with who I was becoming in his eyes, where he would discipline me in really harsh ways. For some reason, I felt like being with my father was somehow going to be better than being with my mother. It wasn't. My junior year of high school, January of that year, an unfortunate fire had occurred, and something had happened with one of the neighbors caused a fire in the apartment complex. We ended up having to evacuate, and a couple of my friends showed up to support me. Landlord, who owned the apartment complex at that time, was very kind enough to allow me, my mom, and my sister to move into one of the empty apartments that was literally like right across the way. For some reason, that event caused me to pivot. I had decided that I didn't want to stay there anymore and that I wanted to follow my dreams and move to California with my dad. I had dreams of becoming a filmmaker because of my dad. At that point in time, I thought that being a successful filmmaker was somehow going to help me achieve all of my financial dreams. Little did I know, because now I see things completely different. It was a horrible way that I had left, though. I had lied to my mother. My father had sent his girlfriend to help me lie and sneak away from my mother and basically give my mother a heart attack because she didn't know where I was. When I finally left and got on the plane to go from here to California, so many bad things were happening that were red flags. That I had ended up losing my birth certificate on one of the planes. I called my father, told him about it, and he chewed my ass out for it. Oh my fucking God. The lady who allowed me to use so that I could tell my dad what had happened was giving me side eye. People can hear you. You're really loud. So it continued on with the journey. Ended up in California finally. My dad decides to be bipolar and smoke a joint with me. What a great father. I felt like I was on a roller coaster. Honestly, because my dad had disciplined me so much, so badly, I was expecting for that to exactly happen. The second we were alone, I was expecting to be smacked across the face, smacked back of the head or some shit, or punched in the shoulder. I had went from the suburbs of Hilliard, Ohio to the grand old city of San Francisco, California. Yeah, it was an extreme culture shock. My dad, he wrote out a grocery list for me because he wanted to cook dinner for everyone in the house. Circled the items that he wanted. I go to the grocery store. Some things that I couldn't find, I got alternate versions of, which at that point I didn't think was a problem because I mean it's the same thing, it's just a different brand. And it costs a little bit less too. Big mistake, apparently, to my dad. When he saw the switches that I had made, he sucker punched me in my fucking chest. At that point, I had become aware of just how much of a problem my dad was. Like, you're punching your 17-year-old daughter in the chest for not getting exactly what you asked for. Not even that she didn't get it at all, but that she didn't get you the exact brand that she asked for. Like that at that point, at 17 years old, I became very aware that there was something not right here. That was one of the first big things that I was going through. Took city transit for the first time, went to a city school for the first time. That I very much enjoyed that experience. There were a group of girls who had kind of took me under their wing, like showed me the ropes around the city, and that was so much fun. I can't really pick between what I like more, suburban teenage experience or city teenage experience. I can't really pick which one I like more. After living in the city, my father and his girlfriend, his girlfriend eventually moved out to California with her daughter. His girlfriend and her daughter got their first apartment in kind of some bad parts of Sacramento. And then my dad got apartment for him and myself in the nicer part of Sacramento. We ended up in like Rosemont area, and I ended up going to, just like in the 5th grade, I went to 3 different high schools. I went to Darby here in Hilliard, Wallenberg in San Francisco, to Rosemont Wolverines in Rosemont, Sacramento. Spent some time with my dad and his girlfriend and her daughter. Senior year of school starts. Literally in the first month, my dad kicks me out, and I'll tell you some of the events leading up. So my dad smokes weed, right? Obviously. The girlfriend that he had didn't smoke weed at that time. And she didn't approve that he would sometimes pass me the J. I had decided to start smoking weed on my own with friends. He's like, you gotta go. Mm-hmm. He packed me up with a few of my clothes. Some of my friends from school had to come help me with my bags. He kept my Xbox, my movies, some of my books from school. You're not able to graduate if you don't return those books, certain books to school. And I almost didn't graduate because he had kept those that whole time, the whole school year. I quickly turned 18 that year because I'm born in October. And school then started September, so it was September straight into October, so straight to my birthday. I'm out on the streets, not only because of that, also, I'm actually forgetting a little bit of part of the story. My dad had ended up punching me on my thigh really, really bad because I was talking back to him. One of my close friends had seen it. She had made me speak to the guidance counselor. The guidance counselor had someone from social services come speak to me at the school. Certain families like to have that whole what happens in this house stays in this house bullshit, and my friend just wasn't about that, especially because my dad was very violently abusive to where it was physically visible to see. One time in middle school, he had hit me so bad with the leather belt that I couldn't sit down the next day in class. But in Hilliard, they don't give a fuck about you or your parents. This white girl in California who was very different from the white girls that I had grew up with here in Ohio wasn't letting that shit slide. She was like, oh fuck no. We're going to the guidance counselor. We're going to give you some help. We're going to help get you out of the situation. And I was down for that shit. I have never met a more real girl, a more real white girl at that point in time in my life. And I was very appreciative for that. I will never forget that girl to this day. I am appreciative for what she did for me. Just unfortunately, now she is a Trump supporter. So that's unfortunately the downfall of that friendship. Oh, so sad. When the guidance counselor got me involved with social services, I had a case opened, and because I was 18, it was a really weird position that I was in. I was 18 years old, but still in high school, needing to finish out my senior year of high school. So I was in this very awkward but doable position. At the time, the social worker that I had, who I also appreciate, who also did not let me down, not once during that entire time. So because they had the case open and the evidence of my father being abusive towards me, when a bad situation where my father ended up getting called into the office, they brought it to his attention that they were aware that he was being physically abusive toward me. And that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, on top of the fact that my dad's girlfriend didn't like that I smoked weed. The friend who helped me out of that situation at that time, she had me stay with her for like 2 weeks while my social worker helped get me accommodated elsewhere. In my specific circumstance and my situation, I needed help not being on the streets because my abusive father no longer wanted to deal with me anymore. My social worker ended up getting me into what is called like a halfway house for people with mental instabilities or like drug problem. Stayed there for a couple of weeks, got transitioned to another type of situation that was similar to that, but in like an apartment with other roommates. That situation didn't work out, so I ended up in like a hotel for like 3 months. So staying with my friend, staying in one halfway house, staying in a different halfway house, and then eventually moving into like a local hotel that was closest to my high school, was how my living situation was going while I was trying to maintain going to school and keep up with my grades and homework and stuff like that. It was a terrible idea, but it happened anyway, where I also got involved with a boy during that time. Terrible situation. Because I got involved with a boy, I ended up like getting the depot shot because we were having unprotected sex when you're young and stupid. I was 18 though, and I would say he was my age or a year younger than me. There were lots of adventures that I had with my friend who had helped me there in that situation, as well as dealing with a boy. A couple months before I graduated, she got me my own apartment, and that was where I ended up staying, and he also stayed with me, not only in the hotel but also in my apartment. Dealing with guys is a lot at that young age, and I was a young African-American young lady, and he is a white boy. Yeah, I don't know where he is to this day, but my first white guy that I was in a semi-serious relationship with, we went through a lot of things together, experienced a lot of things together, and yeah, interesting experience. At this point in time, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up with this first video because I'm really proud of myself, and I've enjoyed speaking with you guys and finally opening up about who I am, how I've grown up, and how I've come to be. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please feel free and stay tuned. The story is not over yet. I have another 10 years to catch you guys up on, so that way you guys know if you want to continue to follow me or not. My goal is to be a comfort content creator. I don't want to be an influencer. There's too much controversy and a lot of nonsense and negativity around being a particular influencer or being a particular niched out content creator. I'm not trying to give anyone any false advertisement on who I am as a person or what I'm about. It's how I'm starting it. I know I've had a couple of videos before this where I've tried to do some daily vlogs and they kind of flopped a little bit. That's fine. It's called growth, and that's what we're here for. We're here for growth. We're here for a good long time, and I have no problem having a couple cringy videos that I could come look back on and be like, yeah, look at how bad I used to be and look at how far I've come. Thank you guys so much for your time. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and yeah, stay tuned for the next video. I hope to catch you guys next time.